Good afternoon. My name is Gabriela Sarcosta-Cohi. I am the Chief Engineer with the Department of Public Works Engineering Division in the town of Greenwich. I'm excited to be here with my colleagues involved with this project to present the proposed improvements along the Route 1 corridor. Throughout this presentation, I might be using a number of fairly technical terms, so I will try to define them as we go. For example, one term I will use significantly is adaptive signal control technology. Because that's a mouthful, I will be abbreviating it to ASCT, or maybe just adaptive signals. Procedure for the evening, public information meeting. This meeting is being conducted hybrid via Zoom option. At the end of the presentation, the public will be given the opportunity to comment. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. If something has already been said, we encourage you to second it, not repeat it entirely. Be as specific as possible. This meeting is intended to collect comments on the preliminary design and not meant to be a Q&A session. We will try to answer immediate questions if possible. Speakers will be called in the order of the sign-up sheet located at the entrance. This meeting is being conducted live and recorded as a webinar. Participation via Zoom can be online or dial in by phone. All attendees are muted by default. To speak, raise your hand and wait to be called on. We will proceed in the order we see hands raised and will alternate between in-person and Zoom speakers. The raise hand button, or *9 for phone participants, and *6 to unmute for phone participants. The moderator must elevate each person to allow them to speak. Please identify yourself by name when you begin speaking. From our design team, representing consultant design, we have Jennifer Babkowitz, Senior Transportation Engineer from Fuss & O'Neill, Marissa Tarallo, Vice President of Traffic and Transportation from AKRF. Representing the town of Greenwich from the Engineering Division are myself, Gabriela Sarcosta-Cohi, Chief Engineer, and in the back, helping me moderate this evening, is Michael Kiselak, Civil Engineer 2. From the Connecticut Department of Transportation Oversight Group, we have Daniel Bazensky, Project Manager of Connecticut DOT, Design of Highway from BL Companies, as well as David Massini, Transportation Supervising Engineer from Connecticut DOT. They are participating via Zoom. The purpose of this meeting is to present the preliminary design for this project, which has been completed to date. This public information meeting will be integral to collecting community feedback on the preliminary design. Comments received tonight will be incorporated into the final design as appropriate. Final design is expected to be completed by spring of 2025. The town of Greenwich owns and operates all traffic signals in town, including those along Route 1. We often receive complaints and experience significant delays in this corridor, which is due primarily to volume, but other contributing factors include the proximity to I-95, schools, significant commercial areas, as well as serving as the link between New York and Stamford. Peak traffic volumes on Route 1 occur during the AM and PM peak hours, the periods when commuter, residential, and transit-related trips are at their highest levels. During peak hours, vehicles wait an average of 2 cycle lengths to clear the exit ramp at exit 5. In the event of an emergency closure on I-95, it is part of the Connecticut DOT Highway Operations I-95 diversion route plan. On a corridor used by approximately 20,000 vehicles daily, depending on the segment, DPW Highway Traffic Operations has struggled for many years to modify the timing cycles in order to alleviate the traffic. We knew that new technology was being implemented in other areas, which adjusted signal timing automatically to improve traffic flow, decrease travel time, reduce congestion, and lower vehicle emissions. As this technology was implemented and proved to alleviate these issues, the town of Greenwich pursued a grant to implement this new technology along the Arch Street corridor. Shortly after the implementation of the adaptive along the Arch Street corridor, the return of traffic in a post-COVID era, we knew we had to pursue the same technology along Route 1. DPW submitted a grant application for this project and was fortunate enough to be awarded. The grant is in the amount of $4 million for the purpose of improving air quality, reducing congestion, minimizing delay, and improving traffic along Route 1. This grant allows for up to 100% reimbursement for participating items. We have received reimbursements for the design costs to date and will continue to submit the reimbursement forms as the design moves along. The state receives a portion of the grant as well for their administration oversight. Once awarded, the consultant selection process took place with scope and fee negotiations shortly following. Fuss & O'Neill was selected as the design consultant with AKRF as their subconsultant. The preliminary design was recently completed, and we will hopefully soon receive approval to move forward with the final design. As the final design progresses, an estimated construction cost will be done, which will be the basis of the construction project authorization letter, determining the future reimbursement amount. Funding for design was provided in fiscal year 22-23, and funding for construction is proposed in the CIP budget for fiscal year 24-25. The town currently divides the traffic signals on Route 1 into 4 zones. Zone 1 is West End, labeled in red. Zone 2 is Central, which is green. Zone 3 in Cos Cob, orange, and Zone 4, East End, in blue. The project also includes 2 traffic signals located on Field Point Road, which are interconnected with the adjacent traffic signals on Route 1. A total of 29 signalized intersections are included in the project. A new traffic signal cabinet is proposed in at least 1 location at the moment. The Town of Greenwich DPW Highway Division is responsible for the operation and maintenance of the traffic signal system through the existing maintenance budget. The current traffic signal configurations at almost all intersections are programmed with set timing plans depending on the time of day and exclusive pedestrian phases. These set timings cannot fully respond to the unexpected traffic demands. Once the design process commenced, traffic modeling and analysis was done to determine intersection operations during peak conditions, as well as appropriate phasing and timing for each traffic signal. Field reviews were completed to inventory all 29 traffic signals to determine if the existing traffic signal equipment and appurtenances are in a state of good repair, in compliance with federal standards, and sufficient to support adaptive signal technology. Finally, all intersections are currently operated with 360-degree video detection technology, which will provide lane-by-lane detection necessary for the adaptive. In consultation with the manufacturer, advanced detection is not required for adaptive. However, it is found to be beneficial for the operations. Therefore, Opportunities to add advanced detection, particularly between the 4 system zones currently under evaluation, will be included in the final design. This project involved the installation of new adaptive hardware and software along a corridor which includes 29 intersections. The replacement of 1 traffic signal cabinet and installation of new signage where needed on Route 1 within the town of Greenwich from New York to Stamford. Installing adaptive along this corridor is designed to create better traffic flow, provide shorter wait times at signalized intersections, and alleviate vehicle congestion. This, in turn, limits vehicle idling, improves roadway capacity, and decreases vehicle queue lengths, thus reducing overall vehicle emissions. Although this works for the majority of situations, there may still be times when volumes are so significant that the only way to reduce delays would be to add additional lanes to Route 1, which the town has no intent to do. The intersections will also have improved pedestrian facilities that will conform to ADA standards for accessible design and provide improved pedestrian safety features. This includes removal of outdated push buttons, installation of APS push buttons, and provide additional push buttons where needed. At some locations, the addition of pedestrian pedestals with pedestal signal heads were also identified. It should be noted that the traffic signals, the green, yellow, red, are not changing. When we were first introduced to adaptive, we were excited to find out that the new adaptive system can detect an influx of vehicles and can improve the traffic congestion by instantly adjusting the timing of the traffic lights. Unlike traditional time traffic signals, the adaptive accommodates changing traffic patterns and calculates a traffic signal timing plan based on the changing traffic conditions on the roadway caused by traffic crashes, special events, road construction, and other roadway incidents in real time. The adaptive will contribute to congestion reduction by decreasing idling times along the corridor and side streets, ultimately improving traffic flow, decreased travel time, reducing congestion, which in turn lowers vehicle emissions. The adaptive will mitigate traffic impacts associated with incidents on I-95. While the cabinets and controllers are the brains of the system, the adaptive does all the work behind the scenes. At least 1 intersection will receive a new cabinet and control box. The existing cabinets will be retrofitted with the latest technology needed to run the adaptive. Each traffic control box communicates with each other in real time through an existing fiber optic network. The existing fiber optics network communicates to the town's central system. For optimal operation of the corridor with adaptive, the phasing at each intersection will be revised to traffic standards. Because of the Arch Street project, the town already went through the selection process of choosing a technology platform, and staff were trained to use its software. MyoVision cameras are existing on the traffic signals, which serve the purpose of collecting and analyzing traffic data on directional traffic flow, vehicle delay, and lane queue length. These cameras can even detect if a pedestrian, bicyclist, and type of vehicle, whether it be a car, SUV, truck, or tractor-trailer, are traveling through the intersection. The McCain Transparity adaptive software receives the traffic data from the controllers, and the signal timing is adjusted and improved based on the data received. Since this technology is steadily monitoring the roads, traffic flow is consistently modified depending on traffic patterns throughout the day. Our experience to date has been positive with the adaptive implementation And as the implementation has been mostly behind the scenes or in the controller box and cloud and not visible construction, as is the case with other projects DPW is involved with. The preliminary design is complete, and the final design is to be completed by spring of 2025. Construction is intended to start summer 2025. Thank you for the opportunity to share our project with you. We are fortunate to have a great team involved in this project from Fuss & O'Neill, AKRF, and BL. The town is excited to be a leader in implementing new and advanced infrastructure that can decrease vehicle emissions and improve air quality. We credit this technology on making a positive impact on our environment today and for future generations to come. We will now proceed with comment session of this meeting, and we'll switch back and forth between in-person and Zoom. As a reminder for those using Zoom, to speak, please raise your hand and wait to be called on. We will proceed in the order we see hands raised, and will all alternate between in-person and Zoom speakers. Raise hand button or *9 for participants, and *6 to unmute for phone participants. The moderator must elevate each person to allow them to speak. Please identify yourself by name when you begin speaking, and also a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. If you haven't signed in and would like to speak, please go ahead.
All right, the first person we have signed up is James Walsh.
I'll turn this around for you.
A quick question. It was unclear from the presentation. Are you guys keeping the exclusive pedestrian phasing at all the intersections as it is now, or are you moving away from that?
So with the preliminary design, we are maintaining exclusive pedestrian in the downtown portion. I believe it's up to 3 to 5 traffic signals currently planned to maintain the exclusive pedestrian. Everywhere else, we're looking to move to concurrent, and we're evaluating the use of a leading pedestrian interval, so allowing a 5 to 7 second lead into the
Which
intersection.
isn't as safe as the exclusive pedestrian.
Which is less safe than the exclusive
Has there
pedestrian.
been thought of doing that in this, so the orange zone, which is probably not the downtown zone, but has the greatest number of juvenile walkers going to the high school, Cobb School, and Central School, is now exclusive pedestrian phasing. And I think it's a really big mistake to move away from it, where you have the probably most at-risk portion of the population that could be disadvantaged by, what you just described there. And, the downtown area, that's all. I feel like it should be everywhere, right? I feel like when you guys moved away from it at the train station, when you did the Arch Street intersection, those are older people commuting from the train. They have the wherewithal to, be safer crossing the street. But when you have kids walking to Cobb School who are 8, 9, 10 years old, right, they need that exclusive, all-way stop to help get them to school safely, right? So I'm pretty dismayed to hear that you guys are thinking about moving away from that.
So it's currently an evaluation, so interested in hearing the public comment on it. We're presenting to the town whether the operations for vehicles are so notable that it is worth making that change. The other piece I would add is, do you happen to know with Arch Street if you have the blank out signs currently with the no turn yields? Because it's a newer standard, you don't, okay. So with going to concurrent, the other thing that Connecticut has been doing a lot of is putting up these blank out signs that will also not allow for a turn on red, which is one of the largest conflicting movements with the crossings. So if we were to do so, we would do it with an evaluation of sightline, of safety, and of signage. But again, we're happy to hear those comments. Part of the reason we've left the exclusive in downtown is hearing the comments. So we'll take that into consideration. It's not been set by any means.
Yeah, and I mean, so when you guys repaved Route 1 a few years ago, right, the Strickland intersection became slightly more dangerous for pedestrians as you took out the, bulb outs, right, that were put in during the Safe Walks to School program a few decades ago. And so I feel like this would be another deterioration from that Safe Walks to School program, earlier this century. If you move away from the exclusive pedestrian phasing, especially between, I would say, that orange zone, right? So going from, the high school right across from the Millbrook exit there, which is heavily utilized by, walkers and children of all ages, through Cos Cob, right? That Strickland Crossroad, Orchard Street area, which is really heavily also utilized by students, especially young students going to both Cos Cob School and Central. That orange zone, I think, would be another one to make sure to really have the exclusive pedestrian phasing. In another intersection, you have the no left there, but right on Indian Field Road, that's really popular with high school students. And to move away from the exclusive pedestrian phasing there as well, I think would be a big mistake, especially for one of our more vulnerable populations who are smaller, lower to the ground, and as it is now, cars run the lights and stuff, so it's less than ideal. A lot of times these improvements are billed at increasing throughput of vehicles, right, and decreasing congestion and helping to clear the environment. But if we're disenfranchising or even, creating a riskier situation for the elderly and the youth who are kind of the most vulnerable pedestrians out there, right, I feel like, why are we saving 2 minutes to get from point A to point B? If you're risking, the pedestrian, the cycling, fabric of that community and kind of moving away from, the ability of a student to walk to school or to walk to CVS or get a coffee. So I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in that sentiment. A lot of students walk to those 3 schools I just mentioned, and it would be great to keep, that exclusive pedestrian phasing in there, especially for the orange zone. That was on the map just for safety's sake. Because if you take a few grams of carbon out of the atmosphere, but a kid gets injured crossing the street on the way to school, has that really improved? Is there also going to be the passive kind of, pedestrian detection is there any plan to put that in at any of the intersections?
So passive pedestrian detection can be implemented as a way of extending. So if you note a pedestrian is still in the road, that technology is usually part of the camera system that the town has available, but it does require an upgrade and is not currently as part of the project. But the town has the ability to keep adding to this system. However, one of the big upgrades that's happening for pedestrians, and that Jen, you can add a little bit to as well, is the ADA accessibility for it. So right now, with those exclusive pedestrian phases, there isn't necessarily always countdown for that. How much time do I have to cross? You're not aware. It's just push for green. Right. You have one button per corner, which is actually not to ADA standard. The ramps are not necessarily accessible. That's all something that's being upgraded. And the piece that we should note is the technology does not require the exclusivity. We're also evaluating all the lengths of the crossing times if there's not sufficient crossing time right now, clearance time for vehicles to make sure that they're not getting such a short yellow that they're conflicting with others. So all of those measures are trying to be implemented. But if, for instance, the town goes to testing non-exclusive or LPI in one location and determines that they would like to go back or would like to in the future go from exclusive to concurrent in a different environment, they'll be able to do that without changing any of this technology or doing any of that. We are designing the intersections to be fully ADA compliant for which way we program them, but it won't preclude you from doing any future programming, lengthening an LPI, lengthening an exclusive pedestrian, and it won't preclude you, again, from doing passive pedestrian detection as it comes up. Right now, we don't use that form of pedestrian detection exclusively. We always provide the buttons, because if, God forbid, technology were to fail, you want to make sure that a pedestrian can get a green light and cross the street, and that's why the buttons are hardwired and reliable.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that, that we are very focused, this project is very focused on pedestrians as well as the vehicles. I think keeping vehicles moving efficiently isn't just about getting everybody through there quickly, it's about making the whole area safer. If you have less frustrated drivers, it's safer for everybody on the road. And I will also say that Connecticut DOT recently passed a Complete Streets Directive. So all of the projects that are overseen by DOT, that is the focus, is complete streets for all users, not just motorists.
That's great to hear. Is there any plan then to put back in the bulb outs that were removed at Strickland and US 1, which were originally implemented as part of the Safe Routes to School program earlier this century with this project, or no?
That's not in the scope of this project.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time. I'm glad to see that you guys are incorporating pedestrians into this, and thank you for considering the ability for that, freezing of the intersection near those schools in that orange zone.
I do just want to add, and the comment is appreciated and well received. There are crossing guards at those locations, and this plan has nothing to do with that. So they'll still be there regardless. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, the crossing guards are super helpful. However, there is no crossing guard in the morning at Strickland and US 1. The crossing guards in the morning are by the firehouse and further down by the Orchard intersection across US 1, right at the school. And they are super helpful, but they're also only there for the 30 minutes prior to school and the 30 minutes after school. And so my concern is more for the kids who are going to school earlier or going to school later, or also just the large volume of students who utilize those intersections to go to CVS or go to Rinaldi's. There's a lot of kids on bicycles and on foot crossing US 1 at all times of the day. And I've seen, at the train station, when the train gets out, it's no longer, freezes the intersection for pedestrians to get across there. And I think if you move away from that, all walk signs, especially kind of the youth and the older segment of our population might be more vulnerable at those intersections. But the crossing guards do a great job, and I appreciate them as well. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you very much for the good questions and commentary. The next person signed up is Horst Tebe.
Good evening, traffic engineers. By way of introduction, my friend Don Conway, who does the cameras, and I do the cable channel. And you're being broadcast, and you'll be available for on-demand viewing on our YouTube channel in a day or two. So if anybody wants to review what happened here, you can do that. As part of, doing that kind of work, I use exit 3 coming from Old Greenwich southbound a couple times a week, 3 times maybe. And I have to tell you, you have me truly worried, because the adaptive technology that was installed in that intersection has not worked in my favor. I used to be able to, once I got a green light at the bottom of the ramp, I used to always be able to, well, 98% of the time, be able to go all the way through the Arch Street lights, up Soundview into Town Hall, without any stops. And since the adaptive signaling has been implemented, I always have to stop either at the light before the railroad tracks or at the light at Railroad Avenue. And so, for me at least, it's the adaptive signaling is 100% worse than what was there before. So that's kind of my background, and I'm wondering, I haven't mentioned this because I only go 2-3 times a week, and it's not a big deal. And I understand that for other drivers who use other routes through those intersections, things may have improved, but for me, they didn't. Now, the reason I'm really worried is that I use the area around Exit 5 and Sound Beach Avenue at least several times a day. And if I were to have a similar experience there, it would be truly disruptive. So I'm wondering how you tested the Exit 3 thing and whether and how you concluded that it was an improvement. And I also wonder how you're going to test these installations, which are far broader, to see if there's an improvement and what can be done by, us citizens if we find that the improvements are not improvements for us.
Thank you for that comment, and I will note regarding Arch Street, while it's the same technology, it is not the same design consultants or design process for the town. And also, there's a host of differences in this particular situation. Arch Street, I can completely understand how difficult it is. I use that exit frequently as well. Arch Street is a difficult location for any kind of traffic signaling system. The intersections are very closely spaced. There is a lot of turning maneuvers. Places that do really well with traffic signals are corridors, straight shots. A lot of what I imagine is a consideration for Arch Street is the variability of the traffic. And in a certain time of day, it can be worse, particularly during peak hours where it's trying to balance everybody.
It's always worse.
And I don't debate it. Again, I don't have it set up, but one of the things I imagine is going on, and we were talking about it earlier today too, adaptive is not, this technology is not AI, and it is not a set it or forget it system. So the year for Arch Street was 2019 to 2020, I believe. Yeah, so with the volumes, with what happened, COVID lived through the setup and the calibration of that adaptive. What's likely happening is the adaptive is requiring some fine tuning based on certain movements going up far beyond where it was originally programmed. And an adaptive system needs to be, what we do to get an adaptive up and running is we develop parameters. So we don't say, if you see 200 cars on this northbound approach, you should serve all 200 in this green time and make everybody else wait. What it's trying to do is balance, and we tell it what the main line is, and we give it parameters, and it uses an algorithm to determine where is best to serve as many people as possible given the parameters we gave it. So basically, if you can think about it, a standard traffic signal says you can have 10 seconds and you can have no more. An adaptive system might be set up to say, if you really need it, you can have 15 under this scenario, or you can have 20 under this scenario. But you're still giving it scenarios and telling it what it can get to. So more than likely what is happening with Arch Street is that it needs some level of fine tuning based on public comment. That's as much as I can explain, at least on Arch Street,
Okay,
since we're not the
so now
consultant on that.
let's
Right.
get to Exit 5.
So in regards to what we're doing with the system on Route 1, first and foremost, there's 4 separate sections on Route 1. We are not designing all 4 sections as one adaptive system because, for instance, Exit 5 is a major intersection that will drive that entire section of the adaptive network.
And they're closely spaced lights.
And they're very closely spaced. So once you are on, we can't have a queue that spills back. We use this advanced detection that Gabriella was noting at the beginning to note when we get to a back of queue so that a light knows it needs to process and not spill back between lights. So near these key intersections that you're speaking of, we will be able to put in advanced detection in order to complete the progression from getting off an exit and getting down Route 1 so we don't spill back down a ramp. Arch Street is only a handful of intersections and does not have that capability because they're closely spaced and it's not as long of a corridor to do this advanced detection. What we're also doing is we've collected counts, we've done extensive modeling, we've retimed all the traffic signals as if they're going to maintain their current technology, and then what we are doing is providing to the vendors and the manufacturers the parameters we as traffic engineers would like them to put in. When that's not provided, the vendor will make that decision in the field, and it causes more of a headache for everyone because they don't have all of that programming done for them. That's something that our firms specialize in, and that's why we sought out doing this job for the town. So I've turned on about 8 adaptive systems now, one of which being at the Woodbury Commons Outlet Mall and Diverging Diamond Interchange, which is horrible in December for Christmas. So I've done some very bad areas. And I can tell you lessons learned on a lot of this. It's all about how you program these and maintain them. And I would encourage you to let the town know once it's up and running, there's a calibration period with which we're going through and evaluating it and having to report back on how it is operating. If you notice something sticking or you notice something happening, to send it into your DPW. Keep in mind there is a lot of technology out there, so it's not always that an adaptive fails or that it's not programmed correctly. Sometimes the camera can go down because ice got on it, and that can affect how well the adaptive is working. So you do need to be mindful that it requires programming and let your DPW know so that they can work toward making those improvements. But we have at least 8 different scoped tasks that we laid out and asked the town to include in our work to make sure that we set it up, planned it, programmed it, and that we will be involved in the implementation oversight to ensure that it is better. We have initial travel times, we have initial data because the cameras are already up, which was not the case for Arch Street, I believe. So we have a baseline to be able to definitively quantify the improvement that this adaptive will provide.
When I said I'm truly worried, one of the things that worries me is that the entrance to southbound 95 at exit 5 is working very well. It apparently has a very long period, but if there's a break in the traffic flow, then it cycles into the next part of the cycle. And usually everyone who's waiting can get on, excuse me. And if that were to change, I'd be very unhappy. The other thing I would like to mention is that different sector. Coming south on 1, past the high school, and there's a turnoff there, and then at the top of the hill, there's a light by the temple. And that light is always an issue at rush hour. The traffic backs up to past the high school because that light is very slow, and it is one of these, you know, I forget what the term you used where, you know, when pedestrians go, nobody else goes.
Exclusive.
And it has separate lights for coming out of Old Church Street and same direction, the light from coming out of the temple. So first Old Church Street goes, then the temple goes, then pedestrians go, and by the time you do all that, the traffic is down by the high school.
I think that's
So-
usually controlled by an officer too at rush hour times.
Well, that's not my experience, but, you know, it's a problem intersection. So I pay some attention to that, and thank you for your attention.
I appreciate those comments. Thank you very much. We'll keep those intersections in mind.
The Whole Foods store there is a factor too. I did say no, but I wanted to ask a couple of things because I thought maybe it would be covered in the presentation. So thank you. Ernst Schirmer. I walk 2,000 miles per year. I bicycle 3,000 miles per year in Greenwich. so I have a pretty good sense about our roads and traffic lights and these type of things. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for having made so much progress to date already. This is really exciting and will be helpful. One of the big issues is this one, what James mentioned before, particularly for children and elderly, is it is really a huge issue. And it's good that we're going to get speed control, but even more so, red light control cameras. And I understand that's going to be separate from what we're doing here. But my question to you is this one. You had mentioned that less frustrated drivers, that makes traffic safer for everyone. Do we have any experience? Because ignoring red lights is a huge issue, not just in Greenwich, right? But having an adaptive system with lights around, how will that help so that the red lights will be respected better? Because as a pedestrian, to wait there, will that car stop or not, right? And my wife and I, we have coined the expression, it's a Connecticut yellow, right? It's still okay, right? No, it's not okay, right? If you're too close to a red light, it's just not safe for anyone. So can you comment on that?
I don't know if there's any way we can ever completely control people running reds, because it's just something people choose to do. But I think in the vein of having less frustrated drivers, if you have somebody who travels the corridor all the time and knows that, oh, if I don't get through this light, I'm going to get stuck at the next three, they're more likely to run that red. If you have a adaptive system that is working well and it's somebody who travels it every day, they have a better understanding that that's not going to happen. So try not to be frustrated, try not to run the red. I think that's.
The
Can I
other
also
thing that
add-
happens, oh, sorry, Michael.
You go ahead first.
The other thing that can happen too, and we have to, there's already cameras here, so these traffic signals are better than a lot of other traffic signals, but they'll still be put into a mode called recall mode, so we tell it like how long it has to stay in it. I'm sure there's still ones around here at night that this happens, but you pull up to the light at 10 o'clock at night, there's no one around at all, and you're still sitting, and you're still sitting, and you're not getting your green light. When people know that that traffic light doesn't sense them and isn't doing anything about it, they're more prone to run the red. Now, that's late at night, but it's the same idea. If they know that, like, no matter what happens, now that I've hit this red light, I'm gonna sit for 15 plus seconds, to Jen's point, those, so to speak, less intelligent traffic signals are more prone to having the people that run the red or run the yellows. All of these traffic signals will be far more responsive than any other traffic signals you have around. So that's usually what we do see, at least, is people specifically running it because they know that the traffic signal isn't paying attention to them. That decreases.
And so
thank
even
you.
can I just comment on that? So even one step before the adaptive, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're retiming all the base parameters for the signals to make sure that all of the, some of these haven't been retimed in decades. And so those the yellow to red intervals on some of them are maybe shorter than what the modern guidelines would be. So we're taking a look to make sure we get all those updated. And it might be the case that we end up adding, there's a clearance time to make sure everybody processes through the intersection before the next phase goes. So we're going to be updating those to make sure that they're fully modern and compliant. Which, doesn't, if somebody runs the red, they still run the red, but at least it means that there's not somebody else in the intersection so quickly.
Great, okay. Then just on the technology side, how far, distance-wise, can these cameras see? Because you obviously do this location dependent, right? If something is in the way or whatever, so you may angle it differently. But can you describe a little bit? I mean, does this go 50, 100 yards?
Yes, so it is a 360 camera. If you look up, they're already out there too, so you can see them when you're driving through. They're on kind of these candy canes, 15-foot tall candy canes. I think that's where they all are installed here. They're right over the intersection, and it's called a fisheye. So it's full 360, it can see. It's about 250 feet in all directions, and they're configured to make sure that they can pick up every single approach to the intersection. So they're gonna get up to 250 feet back on each leg of those approaches. Now, again, you get a long queue or there's a long distance to the next intersection. What we're doing is this advanced detection that would notify that, hey, these cars have left this intersection and they're on their way down here and they're gonna arrive here based on that distance at this time. So as to this, each intersection can only see itself. It's the adaptive software technology that says, you just turned green and I know the distance from this to this, and I now know that by this time, these cars should be here. And if it's a long enough distance, we put in that advance to kind of be a checkpoint to the system. And that's how it determines where the next piece is. So it's the software that knows where everybody is. The camera only knows what's going on at its single intersection.
Okay, we'll do the last person we have signed up in the room, and then we'll do there's a couple on Zoom. So it's Graham Onstein.
Hello, I have two questions. The first one's quick. The current sensing system on Route 1, if you're trying to get onto Route 1 and it's late at night, you like hit the inductive sensor and then a couple seconds later you get the green light. Will the new system see that you're approaching the intersection and try to have the green light kind of meet you before you need to slow down? Or does it still wait for you to approach the red light, stop for a few seconds, and then turn green?
So you still have to get into a pre-described zone. So that zone right now is likely already configured to be the exact same size that zone would be. The only thing I'll say is on the main line on Route 1, because there'll be those advanced detection, we would know you were coming in that sense. But our project ends after the approach of each intersection onto Route 1, so there won't be advanced further back than that. So it'll be that same situation, and the adaptive won't necessarily make it take any more time to get you that green, but you will still need to trigger the zone.
Okay. And then my second question, you said you already put the cameras out and have preliminary data about how much improvement it would cause. So for something like GHS morning traffic, do you have like a percentage number of how much the traffic would improve?
So we have preliminary data for the before because of the cameras, but we don't have the post because we're not on yet. We're currently evaluating what the phasing will be, but this technology is so advanced that the model itself can't model the adjustments of this particular system. So all we can do is, from a modeling standpoint, we'll do the best timing plans as the base to set those parameters. We will have an anticipated improvement as we finalize into final design of that. And then the system gets turned on within those parameters and gets fine-tuned throughout construction based on that starting point. And that's when we'll get our final results, because the cameras will be able to provide that same level of travel time data. So we don't have a projection at the moment. I will say, because I've turned on several, with a lot of congestion, Route 1 is not and shouldn't be anticipated that it will turn into an 80% improvement over current travel time. That's not, it's not a racetrack, nor is it intended to be. We always tell people, a lot of people will get concerned with this kind of technology that you'll get cars driving faster. That's not the goal. The lights are gonna turn green to the speed limit to encourage you to drive the speed limit. If you drive faster, you might just hit a red light because it's anticipating when you are gonna arrive at that intersection. So it's meant to smooth traffic flow, not speed it up. When I've turned on these in highly congested situations, so let's say it's your AM commuter peak or your PM commuter peak, we're shooting for anything of a 10 to 20% travel time improvement. And that can seem small, but if you look at the distance on Route 1, we can make a big improvement for someone that needs to go through several intersections. And again, it's not all about driving faster or getting someplace notably faster. It's about the smoothness with we could travel and having less stop-go queues that are creating the emissions that we would also like to reduce. So I would anticipate that we're going to get at least a 10% improvement. That's always what we shoot for. I've got systems running that are up to 30%. 40% on Saturdays, because a lot of times they haven't been programmed in a long time. These haven't been retimed in a long time, so I do anticipate you'll notice an improvement.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're going to take the two that are online. The first one is Karen Oztamel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I'm Karen Ozdemel, and I live in Riverside. So I'm very close to Sound Beach Avenue and Exit 5. And I'd like to comment on the eastern end of the Post Road. And I am very much in favor of the exclusive pedestrian phases. And I'm very worried on going into this concurrent concept. First, let me note that when you gave your your presentation in the beginning, which was very well done, congratulations. But there was no discussion in all of it about pedestrian safety, about bicycle and pedestrian safety. It was all about smooth movement and flow of traffic and then traffic, cars, traffic, but never about pedestrians. So I fear that the focus is about, gee, 95's backed up, let's get everybody on 95 and make it really easy to get through Greenwich. And at the expense of the people who live here and the people who walk. So starting at what I will call my end of town on the eastern end, we have Eastern Middle School, and all the kids, or not all the kids, but many of the kids from Eastern cross the Post Road, and they cross the Post Road mainly at Sheep Hill. But let me just start from the other end. You have the Hyatt, you have two hotels. We have the Hyatt and we have the J House. And people who stay there are now walking from those spots to all of the sort of cool coffee spots and salad places that have developed all along this corridor, I would say from St. Catherine's Church all the way to the Stamford border. So we also have kids who are crossing to get to school. We have all these hotel people. We have people who live on north side of the Post Road who walk to the old Greenwich train station, and they're at that mega intersection where Rite Aid is. That's another, by the way, popular destination for people to walk to, as well as the what used to be called the Thruway Shopping Center, right at Exit 5. So and Exit 5 is such a disaster, intersection. I mean, it's really busy and it's very confusing, and there's 6 different places, it's not just a square, it's a multi phase intersection there. To think that there would be some concurrent walking there, it just is frightening. To think that there'd be concurrent walking at Sheep Hill when all the kids are coming and going, and not just at school time. It's the same thing, just like it is down in Coscob. People are coming and going there all the time. Now we've got Odalise and Cobb's Bread and the CFC coffee shop closer to Exit 5. I mean, it's kind of a happening spot around there, and you've got a lot of people at the 2 hotels who walk to all of these places. So I really am very concerned that you would get rid of the exclusive pedestrian phases at this end of town. And if I might add that if you are at the Hyatt and you want to go to Stamford, you can't even, if you came out of the Hyatt, for example, walking and made a right, and you would come to where, across the street now becomes Stamford, there's not even a crosswalk there or anything you can press to even just stay on this side of the Post Road to get to where there's a Dunkin' Donuts, and obviously there's a CVS at the bottom of the hill and the grocery store. So you can cross the Post Road with the crosswalk, but you can't stay on the same side of the street as on the Post Road. So, I mean, I think it's time for the town to start taking a little bit more focus on the pedestrian side and bicyclists, because this is where all the kids are coming. They're coming down Sound Beach Avenue. They're crossing over the Post Road. They're going to the other side. I mean, you have to really respect that. And I hope you will continue with this exclusive pedestrian phase. Have it skip every other cycle. Have it be shorter. I don't know, whatever it is you need to do if there's, got to improve the flow. And I'm all for, I work in downtown Greenwich, and so, I know what it's like. I hit the 14 lights. But I am happy to know that when the pedestrians have the opportunity to go, no one is going across the Post Road either direction, and especially coming off Exit 5. These are people who don't live in the community, and they are not paying attention. And lest we forget, an elderly woman was just killed walking to in Stamford, right on the other side of the Greenwich line. And another woman, I think, at a concurrent type situation where she was killed in Stamford at, I can't think of the name of it. It's a big company. So, people are getting hit when it's not all stop for pedestrians. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Next speaker we have is Harry Fisher.
Oops. Just realized I needed to unmute. Can you hear me?
now. Yep, we hear you.
Okay. With all respect to my friend, Mr. Tebby, I also go through the Arch Street maze, I will call it, a couple of times a week. And the traffic improvement there for me has been huge. But I would have two questions for our team about that. One is, has that had an impact on the intersection of Soundview and Arch Street? And maybe that's where Horst has been running into trouble. And have the new signals been in place long enough to get some statistics about accidents, and have there been any pedestrian issues in that whole area? And then I have another question once you answer those.
So to answer your question,
Mine did the same. This one still seems good.
so there weren't any accidents or pedestrian incidences as far as I am aware of. We can request that report be made through the police department. Typically, when we have a project of this nature, the police department will bring it to our attention directly. But I have not received any reports of that nature. We are able, through the system, to collect data to compare before and after. I know that when we did do the implementation, there was a 30-day collection period with the cameras because they were not originally in place, where we collected information so that we can compare before and after. We know that there has been a significant improvement with regards to travel time and level of service. So we can compare certain periods of time, whether it be 1 week or 1 month or several months. So now that we've had it in place long enough, we're able to compare those reports. And we're looking at the Transparity representatives and reaching out to them to see if we can get that report to compare. But we know that there has been significant improvements. And thank you for your comment, Mr. Fisher. We have received a lot of compliments.
You just dropped off.
Sorry, Harry, the mics just died in the room, so Gabrielle's going to come to the podium in the back.
Traveling around the room.
Used to that.
We have been receiving many comments from the public and a lot of compliments thanking us for the improvements and how it's changed drastically, especially on the ramps at I-95. They don't see the queuing that they did before, which was causing extreme backups on I-95.
Have you been able to measure any impact on the intersection of Soundview and Arch Street, which is a fairly problematic intersection?
Yes. So that intersection doesn't have any cameras. It's not signalized. We do know that there have been complaints with regards to the way the intersection is set up and the stop sign. It's so close to the signalized intersection. It is something that has been brought to our attention, the one where it meets Arch Street at Soundview. But no, there's no... The Arch Street project did not compare that intersection.
Right. Okay, and then, the Arch Street project involved the replacement of all the poles, all the signal lights, all that sort of stuff. I gather that the Route 1 project is more about what's in the boxes, the software, the cameras that I guess you'll replace on top of the arms and all of that. Are you confident that you can have success without the wholesale replacement of the lights? And I'm very conscious of what people have said about exit 5, which is a kind of a nightmare intersection. But can we expect success without wholesale replacement?
The first part of this project was to inventory all of the signals and all of the equipment, and it's all found to be in a state of good repair. We did have it in the scope to possibly replace up to 2 full signalized intersections if we thought it was necessary, and it's really not. The equipment does work very well. You will see some new pedestrian equipment where it's needed. But it allowed us to focus more of the funds on the actual technology behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I would just add, if you think about it like your car, the tire pressure gauge can be on and it can break, and you can decide, I don't want to replace that for a very, very long time, and it has no impact to how well your car is driving. Not to say we want anything broken, and that's not the case. We inventoried everything, but it's more to the point that the lights really aren't, while they look a lot nicer on Arch Street, you need to do that when you're worried about the structural integrity of the traffic light or the wiring is frayed. It's so much more about the state of repair. Those traffic lights are the lights in your ceiling. They don't have any more technology to them. They are not more intelligent. All of the thought that goes into how a traffic signal operates lives in that box. And if you just replace the box and everything else is in a state of good repair, you can have traffic heads up that are 50 years old, and as long as they'll turn red, yellow, green, it will completely not matter that they aren't brand new, matte black painted and shiny. So the operations is completely unaffected by that equipment. It's just that we wanted to inventory to make sure the equipment was in the state of good repair. More than likely, Arch Street was at the point of the end of its useful life and needed a replacement. That's what we evaluated here with these intersections, and none of them require that replacement.
It's interesting because there was a request from DPW in the last budget cycle to inspect the poles of many signals in town for their structural integrity. So I'm glad you've done that work, at least on the post road. I think I lost you again.
No, thank you, Harry. Anything else?
Nope. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the good work you're doing.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you. Next up, Rick Sharon.
Hi, I'm Rick Sharon. I'm a managing partner and part owner of a commercial building on the Post Road. You mentioned replacing at least one signal cabinet and possibly pedestrian ramps and signals and signage. Do you anticipate that requiring any lane closures or other disruptions to traffic? And if so, do you plan to minimize that? For example, maybe doing it on low traffic days or low volume hours?
I think the type of equipment we're talking about should have very minimal impacts to traffic. I don't know that anything that we're doing would even require a full lane closure. And if it did, it would be very short term, to get some equipment in, possibly. It would be in the specification package for the contractor, exactly what they're allowed to do and what time of day that it's allowed. That will definitely be part of our design and something that the town will have say over when that happens.
And if I could just add with regards to any pedestrian ramps that would need to be replaced as part of this project, we are required to have police protection in order to accommodate the construction while also protecting the public. So during the construction hours, there will be police officers in the event traffic needs to wait for a few moments so that a construction vehicle or operator needs to access the ramp.
Thank you. And my thinking was if it can be scheduled for perhaps off hours, and as an example, I'm guessing there's not a lot of traffic between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., which would seem an ideal time to do that kind of work to minimize impact, but I'll leave that all up to you to figure out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Francia Alvarez.
Hi, my name is Francia Alvarez, and I'm in District 12. And I appreciate all the work that you folks have been doing on all of our side streets. I went to many of the meetings that were about the connector roads, and they've been very helpful. And I look forward to the solutions you're going to come up with around our school districts and everything. So I wanted to talk just about 3 different things. Actually in Havemeyer, in District 12, there's Havemeyer Lane, Palmer Hill Road, Sheep Hill Road, and Old Orchard. And whenever there's something, a problem on the highway or the post road is backed up, people end up coming up Palmer Hill Road. They go Valley to Palmer Hill, or they go Havemeyer Lane to Palmer Hill. With the changes that you're looking to make with the signals, will that help to take some of that traffic off of these side roads?
So what I can yell really loud. What we want to do is make it so that there isn't as much backup on Route 1, so there isn't that incentive.
Hold on one second. Her mic battery just dropped, so she's going to come to the podium. Just bear with us.
Okay. There you go. All right. What we want to do is make it so that Route 1 is smoother flow so that it can take more traffic before there's the incentive to be on the side streets. So it's not directly gonna tell people they can't be on the side streets. It's not gonna not allow them the turning movements to be on the side streets. You know, people live there and they need to be there. But the hope is that just kind of like with what they're doing on 95, trying to make improvements there, we're trying to keep people on the roads they're supposed to be on. And Post Road is one of those roads. So hopefully we can make it so that it can handle a certain increase in traffic before everyone feels they need to be on your side streets.
And do you think something like Waze is creating the issues on the side streets? And is there anything that the town or the state can do about that?
Yeah, so it's funny, that's been changing over time. I don't know if you've noticed as much where, for instance, today on my drive here, I was driving from Stamford for my Stamford office, and I knew notably better for me to be on Boston Post Road than on I-95, but it still told me I should be on I-95, and it wasn't until I made the detour choice myself. There are some agreements going on. You'll notice since the original start of Waze that there are less times that it will tell you to be on side streets than it used to. I mean, it used to just crowdsource and send you anywhere all the time. There has been that level of agreement, though it still occurs. I can't say that, I think that's for the government to be regulating, kind of like what we're dealing with social media and other pieces. But again, our hope as traffic engineers is that if we improve the travel time, Waze will tell you to stay on the faster route, and that the faster route will maintain to be on Boston Post Road, as it is a faster speed road than your residential street, which Waze is aware of. So the traffic should have to get quite bad before Waze thinks that your local roads are better than Boston Post Road if we can get the timing right of your traffic signals.
Okay, that's great to hear that. I appreciate that. Then I have just 2 other things. In our neighborhood, there's a woman that is blind, and She takes the bus. She lives near exit 5. So she goes to exit 5, gets on the bus to go south on the Post Road, and then she comes back and is dropped off on the far side of the Post Road, right next to the highway. And she said to me that she's really afraid to cross the street there. The lights change quickly. There's so many cars there, and it's very, very difficult for her. And I wondered I wonder if if any of you have, or if any of the consultants have gotten on a bus with perhaps her or maybe somebody else in the neighborhood and experienced what they're experiencing. It's very difficult, I think, for those of us that are sighted to really understand what it must be like to try to get across, to try to get on a bus at exit 5. And so that's one thing I'd like if somebody could maybe perhaps get on a bus with her and experience it along with her to understand it better. And then finally, I was driving up the Post Road in the past couple of weeks, and I was shocked. There was a UPS delivery man in the middle of the road carrying packages, big packages across the road. And there was traffic in both directions, and he was standing in the middle of the road waiting for somebody to just slow down for him to get across. There's no way for anybody to get across there. And I know that that's not where you want to put in a crosswalk, but how are people, delivery men for sure, how are they supposed to get back and forth on the Post Road without any areas where they can cross? And that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Francia. The next speaker is Wendy. Just give your last name when you come on.
Hi, can you hear me? It's Wendy Force. Last name, may the force be with you. It's an observation, and it's interesting that the engineer happened to come down from Stanford today. I was on the road, I was at ShopRite, and I was coming down.
Wendy, please unmute yourself.
Sorry.
Sorry,
Okay,
I
now
think
can
I
you
may
hear-
have
Wendy
accidentally
Force.
muted you back there. My bad.
Oh, so it's your fault. Okay.
I think so. My apologies.
It's okay. And I was coming down the Post Road from Stanford, and right near where Staples is, there's Sound Beach Avenue crosses there, and it's like, oh my God, look there's a big backup of traffic in the outside lane or whatever. I don't know the one that's going to eventually go onto the throughway. Okay. There was a backup of traffic all the way to that stop sign going across Sound Beach Avenue. And it's like, what's going on here? So I went in the other lane because I wasn't getting on the throughway. And then I realized that lane of traffic was all for cars trying to get onto the throughway. I've never seen it that bad. And one thing that happens, and I don't know how they can fix this, but a lot of people don't want to wait in the queue. And what they'll do is they'll go in the middle lane, and then they put their left blinker on to try and squeeze in front of somebody who's been patient enough to wait in that line. I think they should be putting in those yellow poles, so it forces people not to be able to do that. That might help a little bit, but those cameras can't see that far behind. So what's going to happen? I mean, how is this going to work if we've got traffic like that trying to get on the throughway?
So what the cameras are doing, they don't actually have to be able to see 250 feet. There's actually a whole bunch of other detection we could use, but the town has cameras which have a host of other benefits. What the detection that camera is doing is it's looking at how much time the zone that's drawn, whether it's 40 feet or 6 feet or whatever it is, how much time it's occupied by a vehicle. So if you think about it in the light turns green and you have 100 cars queued, the entire time that light is green, there's going to be somebody on that zone. It's never going to gap out, so to speak. We were talking before about the southbound lane has so much green time that at a certain point there's no cars left and therefore it gets off of green. In this case, the adaptive system is going to say, hey, I gave 30 seconds and it was occupied the entire time I gave 30 seconds. Next time, I'm going to give 35 seconds. And it's going to do that cycle by cycle and make those steps until it gets to a utilization that it says, okay, it wasn't utilized the whole time. I was able to shut off. That's the right number for now. So that's the stepping process that the adaptive goes through. And it doesn't need to be able to see the back of the queue to know how many cars are waiting. It's making that determination by you utilizing that zone. The bigger issue is someone texting and not pulling forward onto the zone. And we draw the zones as large as we can accordingly to make sure that we don't just get that. As far as bypassing the lane and getting on, again, that kind of contributes to that driver frustration. It's, people can't do it. We can put up barricades. You have a trade-off with barricades and maintenance and plowing, and we do live in the Northeast where there's snow and what those barricades do. But again, the hope would be if the adaptive system had been on then the day that you saw that queue, it would have continued to step up over a minute, 2 minutes, the length of the cycle each time, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, until it cleared that queue faster than it likely did with the fact that the current system just says, I only have 30 seconds to give. I can give you no more all day, every day, regardless of what is happening on 95.
The question I have then is, in this case, these cars were backed up all the way and they may have even gone through, the stoplight. So what you're saying is all those cars, they will keep on sending them. The light will stay green until all these cars get through onto the throughway.
No, not forever. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's the way it sounded like. It'll stay green as long as people are in that queue.
Yeah, so we give it parameters for how much it can step every time, and you never want an adaptive. Like, again, you get that texting person that sits on it the whole time. All of a sudden, it's going to say, oh, I'm just going to stay on here indefinitely until this person gets off their phone. It doesn't work like that. It has the algorithm gets inputs from us. So we're going to say you can step up to 5 seconds each time, or you can step up to 10 seconds each time, but it has a limit that it can step each time so that it doesn't, an incident happens on 95 and all of a sudden to some points earlier that we just start catering to 95 and turning Post Road into 95. That's not what we're going to do. We need to move side street traffic, and there's a limit to how much green time can be given to Boston Post Road.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Wendy. The last person with their hand raised that I see is Bill O'Neill. So Bill, you should be unmuted now. And then if there's anybody else, please raise your hand to let us know that you want to say something.
Yes, it's Bill O'Neill from Old Greenwich. I would just like to echo some comments made earlier. I think the adaptive control on Horse Neck and Arch Street has really made the situation worse. I've repeatedly sat there and watched long lines, long queues on Horse Neck where there's no visible traffic on Arch Street for as far as you can see. It gets to the point where people think the light is broken and start to run the red light. I heard earlier that maybe the data that was fed into that system was from COVID and it's no longer applicable. I'm not sure what the issue might be, but I would hope, I would consider that to be a beta site. I mean, the town is using this adaptive control, and I thought that was one of the first. It doesn't seem to be working. I would hope we would fix the beta site before we try to roll this out to a very, very, very serious intersection. Exit 5 is one of the worst that I can think of in town. If we're not showing that we're capable at exit 3 there, do we really think we can do it right at exit 5? Why don't we just fix the first site and then move on from there?
Thank you, Bill, for your comment. We will consult with Transparity and take a look at the system. Like Marissa said before, sometimes it could be an issue with a camera or, just the zone, but we'll definitely bring it to their attention and just give it a look at and take a look at the timings to make sure everything is timed correctly.
Yeah, just
Right.
to add to that, if it helps us if you guys reach out with your observations like this. Otherwise, we can't be everywhere at once. The system is capable of doing certain things on its own, but if we don't hear about things like that, then we don't know to look into them because we all have a lot on our plates. So it's very helpful to hear these kinds of things, and we can try to address them. So whenever you see something like that, don't hesitate to let somebody in DPW know.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Does anyone else in person have anything to say? Sure, if you can just state your name when you move up to the podium, please. Actually.
Okay, I'm Emma Olmsted. I live in Riverside. I wanted to second everyone's comments about keeping as much as possible the exclusive pedestrians. It's not just for pedestrians. I know that when I was younger, I also would ride my bicycle on the sidewalks. And so, when you're on a bicycle, the concurrent signals are a lot less helpful than an exclusive one, which allows you to do more diagonals if you need to. I also wanted to point out that some of the traffic in our most trafficked areas, like on Greenwich Ave and Cos Cob, is, as someone else I think mentioned, due to improperly parked vehicles. Outside of near Cos Cob School, people like to park in a place that there is no parking spot, and it forces people to merge into one lane in that area, and that can seriously impact the traffic at those peak hours, as well as just during the daytime. So I know that's not within the scope of this project. I think the signalized the new signals are great, but if you're really looking to improve traffic, that's also a significant contributor, is like people who are just parked in the middle of the road a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I spoke.
Hi, Bill, you have your hand up still. Is there something else?
No, I'm sorry. Thank you.
And we have Rick Sharon still has his hand up. Let me see if there's something else that Rick wanted to say.
Yeah, just a real quick question. I noticed we recorded this session.
Yeah.
Will that recording be available, and/or will the slides you showed be available for download? And if so, where would we find those and when?
Yes. So in 2 days, the recording of this meeting will be posted on the project webpage, as well as a PDF to the slides which were presented. So if you go to the town's webpage under the Town of Greenwich Department of Public Works, Projects, CMAQ Route 1 Corridor Improvements, on that project webpage is where the links will be posted.
Okay, I think that's the same page that had the Zoom link on it. For this
Correct.
session. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that concludes our meeting for tonight. Thank you to everyone who attended and participated. Have a good evening. Thank you.